James Cameron has always existed in a space where ambition and skepticism collide. Long before Avatar became a cultural phenomenon, Cameron was already a filmmaker defined by excessive budgets, excessive runtimes, and an uncompromising belief in his own vision. When he stepped onto the Oscar stage after Titanic claimed Best Picture, raising his arms in triumph, the moment became emblematic of how the industry viewed him. A director of undeniable talent, yet often accused of arrogance. At that time, despite proven successes like The Terminator and Aliens, Cameron was still perceived as someone who pushed too far, demanded too much, and risked everything on spectacle. History, however, has repeatedly shown that betting against James Cameron is rarely a wise choice. The release of Avatar fundamentally reshaped that perception. What many expected to be an overindulgent experiment became a defining moment in modern cinema, introducing a fully realized world that audiences did not simply watch, but inhabited. Years later, Avatar: The Way of Water reinforced that legacy, proving the first film was not a fluke, but the foundation of a carefully constructed universe. Together, the franchise has amassed more than $5.2 billion worldwide, along with countless technical and artistic accolades. At this stage, Avatar is no longer just a series of films. It is a benchmark against which cinematic spectacle itself is measured, and every new installment carries the weight of that expectation. Avatar: Fire and Ash enters this landscape under immense pressure. Unlike a traditional sequel, it does not need to justify its existence financially or technologically. Those battles were won long ago. Instead, the challenge lies in sustaining relevance. Cameron is no longer introducing Pandora to a curious audience for the first time. Viewers now arrive with familiarity, emotional attachment, and, inevitably, heightened scrutiny. The question is no longer whether the visuals will impress, but whether the world still has something meaningful to say. In this sense, Fire and Ash is burdened not by competition from other films, but by the shadow of its own predecessors. James Cameron's strength has always been his ability to think in long arcs rather than isolated stories. The Avatar saga was conceived as a multi-part narrative from the outset, and Fire and Ash represents a crucial turning point within that design. It is positioned as the continuation of unresolved emotional threads rather than a self-contained reinvention. This approach is both its greatest advantage and its greatest risk. Cameron trusts that the audience is willing to follow him deeper, to accept that some answers are delayed in service of a larger picture. Such confidence can only exist when a filmmaker has absolute faith in the world he has created. At the same time, Cameron is acutely aware of his reputation. He understands that audiences expect nothing less than total immersion, and that anything perceived as complacency would be judged harshly. Fire and Ash therefore arrives as a statement of intent. It signals that the Avatar franchise is not coasting on past achievements, but actively expanding its thematic and emotional scope. The title itself suggests transformation, destruction giving way to rebirth, echoing Cameron's long-standing fascination with cycles of collapse and renewal. This is not merely a return to Pandora, but an escalation of its conflicts and consequences. Ultimately, Avatar: Fire and Ash stands as a reflection of James Cameron himself, relentless, confident, and unwilling to retreat into familiarity without purpose. It carries the burden of legacy not as a constraint, but as a responsibility. Cameron is not attempting to redefine cinema once again. Instead, he is reaffirming why his worlds endure. In doing so, he invites the audience to trust him one more time, to believe that beneath the spectacle, there is still a story worth following, and a vision that remains fiercely alive. The emotional core of Avatar: Fire and Ash reveals itself not through spectacle, but through quiet devastation. The film resumes in the immediate aftermath of Neteyam's death, and the absence he leaves behind feels heavy in every frame. This loss is not treated as a narrative checkpoint to be overcome, but as an open wound that reshapes the Sully family from within. Grief does not arrive as a single emotion. It fractures into sorrow, guilt, anger, and silence. Each member of the family carries that burden differently, and the film takes deliberate time to show how mourning can divide even those bound by love and shared history. Neytiri's grief is deeply spiritual, yet volatile. She turns inward, clinging to prayer and memory, seeking solace in traditions that once brought her balance. But beneath that surface lies a growing fury, born from a lifetime of loss. Everything familiar to her has been taken piece by piece, and Neteyam's death becomes the final spark that ignites years of unresolved pain. Jake, by contrast, does not give his anger a voice. His silence burns hotter than words ever could. He is a father who failed to protect his child, a leader forced to confront the cost of every decision he has made. The film portrays this tension with restraint, allowing glances and unspoken moments to carry as much weight as confrontation. The children, caught between these two forces, embody the quiet cruelty of grief passed down through generations. Guilt lingers over them, particularly for those who survived when their brother did not. They struggle not only with the absence of Neteyam, but with the unspoken question of why fate chose one life over another. This emotional instability becomes the foundation upon which the film builds its next conflict. The family is together in body, yet emotionally fractured, making them vulnerable in ways no external enemy could immediately exploit. That vulnerability takes shape in the figure of Spider. As the son of Colonel Quaritch, his presence becomes a constant reminder of a threat that may return at any moment. He is not treated as an enemy, but neither can he be fully trusted. For Jake and Neytiri, Spider represents unresolved fear, a living connection to the violence that continues to haunt their lives. Their decision to distance him, to place him within the safety of a research facility, is driven by protection rather than rejection. Yet this choice, born from fear and grief, quietly sets the story in motion. It is a moment that feels tragically human, an attempt to regain control in a world that has already taken too much. As the family moves forward, their path leads them into unfamiliar territory and into contact with new Navi clans. This transition is not framed as an adventure, but as an emotional displacement. They are no longer running solely from enemies, but from memories they cannot escape. The world beyond their home reflects their inner state, unsettled, unpredictable, and increasingly dangerous. What Fire and Ash captures with remarkable clarity is the idea that grief does not fade simply because the story must continue. It lingers, influencing choices, distorting judgment, and shaping destinies. In this way, the film grounds its larger conflicts in something painfully intimate. Before battles are fought and alliances tested, Avatar, Fire and Ash asks its audience to sit with loss and understand its consequences. The fractures within the Sully family are not weaknesses in the narrative. They are its emotional foundation. By allowing grief to drive the story forward, James Cameron reminds us that even in a world of towering creatures and vast landscapes, the most powerful force remains the bonds that hold a family together and the pain that threatens to tear them apart. If there is one area where Avatar, Fire and Ash refuses to compromise, it is in its presentation of Pandora as a living, evolving world rather than a static backdrop. While the narrative structure may feel familiar, the sense of scale and visual ambition remains astonishing. James Cameron does not merely revisit Pandora. He reshapes it, revealing new environments that feel both wondrous and foreboding. The planet no longer exists solely as a place of beauty to be defended, but as a complex ecosystem shaped by conflict, survival, and change. This evolution is central to the film's identity, reminding audiences why Pandora continues to captivate even after years of familiarity. Visually, Fire and Ash surpasses its predecessors in both density and contrast. Lush forests still stretch endlessly toward the horizon, oceans still shimmer with impossible clarity, and the skies remain vast and untamed. Yet these familiar images are now juxtaposed with harsher landscapes marked by volcanic ash, scorched stone, and muted skies. The introduction of these environments alters the emotional texture of the film. Pandora is no longer presented as an untouched paradise alone. It is a world that bears scars. This shift subtly reinforces the film's thematic focus on loss and transformation, allowing the setting to mirror the inner turmoil of its characters. The action sequences within these environments are executed with remarkable precision. There is a tangible sense of weight to every movement, every creature, and every clash. Cameron's command of spatial storytelling ensures that even the largest battles remain legible, never dissolving into chaos. The choreography emphasizes survival over spectacle for its own sake, grounding the grandeur in physical consequence. Not a single moment feels careless or unfinished, reinforcing the idea that Fire and Ash is crafted as a deliberate visual experience rather than a collection of set pieces. Central to this expanded vision of Pandora is the introduction of new Na'vi clans, each contributing to the film's broader world building. The Talim clan, nomadic traders who traverse the skies in massive airships, embody adaptability and commerce. They move freely across the planet, connecting distant regions through trade and negotiation rather than force. Their design and culture add a sense of mobility to Pandora, suggesting that not all survival is rooted in territorial defense. The Talim represent a different philosophy, one based on movement, exchange, and pragmatism, broadening the audience's understanding of Na'vi society. In stark contrast stand the Hmong clan, a group defined by aggression and opportunism. Where the Talim navigate Pandora with purpose, the Hmong exploit it. Their presence introduces an internal conflict among the Na'vi themselves, challenging the previously unified portrayal of the species. This distinction is crucial. Fire and Ash does not rely solely on external threats to drive tension. It acknowledges that division can arise from within. By presenting Na'vi clans with fundamentally different worldviews, the film adds moral complexity without abandoning clarity. Despite the sheer volume of visual information, the film never loses focus. Each new element serves a narrative function, reinforcing the idea that Pandora is vast, diverse, and far from monolithic. Cameron resists the temptation to overwhelm purely for spectacle. Instead, the grandeur is purposeful, reinforcing the stakes of the story and the scale of what is at risk. The result is a cinematic experience that feels immersive rather than indulgent. Ultimately, Avatar: Fire and Ash reaffirms that Pandora remains one of cinema's most fully realized worlds. Even when the story treads familiar ground, the setting continues to evolve, offering new perspectives and possibilities. The spectacle is not an end in itself, but a language through which the film communicates emotion, conflict, and consequence. In doing so, it reminds audiences that Pandora is not merely a place to admire, but a world that continues to grow, fracture, and endure. The arrival of Varang marks a decisive shift in the tone of Avatar: Fire and Ash, signaling a darker and more internalized conflict than the franchise has previously explored. Unlike earlier antagonists who represented an external force imposed upon Pandora, Varang emerges from within the world itself. She is not an invader, nor an abstract symbol of industrial destruction, but a product of catastrophe, shaped by loss and survival in its most unforgiving form. Through her, the film reframes conflict, not as a simple clash between opposing sides, but as the result of belief systems that have fractured under pressure. Varang is introduced as the leader of the Mang clan, a group that has turned away from the traditional spiritual foundations of the Na'vi. Her past is defined by a volcanic disaster that destroyed her homeland, an event that, in her eyes, exposed the silence of a deity that promised balance and protection. When Iwa did not intervene, faith became meaningless. From this absence of divine response, Varang forged a new path, one grounded not in harmony, but in dominance. Her leadership is built on strength, fearlessness, and absolute resolve, qualities that inspire loyalty among her followers while fueling their brutality. She does not ask for devotion. She demands it through action. What makes Varang compelling is not her cruelty alone, but the clarity of her worldview. She does not see herself as a villain, nor does the film frame her as one-dimensional to her people. She is a survivor and a guide, someone who led them through hunger and despair when belief failed them. This perspective adds a layer of moral complexity that deepens the narrative. Fire and Ash uses Varang to explore how trauma can reshape ideology and how survival, when stripped of compassion, can become indistinguishable from destruction. Her rejection of spiritual connection is not impulsive, but deliberate, making her opposition feel ideologically grounded rather than purely antagonistic. The conflict escalates further when Varang's path intersects with that of Colonel Quaritch. Their alliance is not born from trust, but from convenience, a convergence of intent rather than loyalty. Together, they represent two forms of devastation, one born of technological domination, the other forged through cultural collapse. The film is at its most intense when these forces overlap, creating moments where chaos feels inevitable rather than engineered. For a time, this union elevates the threat level significantly, pushing the Sully family into increasingly dire situations and amplifying the sense of urgency that defines the film's middle act. However, as the narrative moves toward its conclusion, the weight of these antagonists begins to soften. Varang, once portrayed as nearly unstoppable, is ultimately overcome with a speed that undercuts her earlier presence. Quaritch, similarly, appears restrained in moments where decisiveness once defined him. This shift does not erase their impact, but it does make the resolution feel more predictable than the build-up suggests. The danger remains real, yet its edge dulls as the story aligns itself toward inevitability rather than uncertainty. The film seems aware of this trade-off, choosing narrative momentum over prolonged ambiguity. Even with these limitations, Varang stands as one of the franchise's most meaningful additions. She expands the scope of conflict beyond the familiar human versus nature dynamic, introducing ideological division within the Na'vi themselves. Through her avatar, Fire and Ash suggests that the greatest threats are not always external, but born from the way communities respond to loss and abandonment. Varang's rise does not simply darken the film's tone. It deepens its thematic foundation, reminding audiences that survival without belief can give rise to something far more dangerous than any invading force. At its thematic core, Avatar, Fire, and Ash is a meditation on hatred and the choices it demands, presenting vengeance not as a heroic impulse, but as a corrosive force that threatens to consume everything it touches. The film treats hatred with a quiet seriousness, allowing it to emerge organically from grief rather than framing it as a sudden turn. For Neytiri, hatred is inseparable from memory. Every loss she has endured layers itself upon the last, until anger becomes a constant presence rather than a fleeting reaction. Her pain is raw and deeply personal, and the film does not rush to soften it. Instead, it acknowledges that love, when wounded beyond endurance, can harden into something dangerous. Jake Sully's journey runs parallel yet distinct. Where Neytiri's rage is emotional and immediate, Jake's struggle is one of restraint. He stands at the center of impossible decisions, forced to balance leadership, fatherhood, and survival. Fire and Ash places him in his most vulnerable position since his arrival on Pandora, repeatedly confronting him with the question of whether mercy still has a place in a world that continues to punish it. His choices are no longer framed as victories or failures, but as compromises made under pressure. The film suggests that true leadership is not defined by strength alone, but by the willingness to bear the consequences of compassion in a violent world. This tension culminates in Jake's symbolic return as Toruk Makto, a moment that resonates not as spectacle, but as necessity. The act is less about reclaiming legend than about reaffirming responsibility. By uniting the clans once more, Jake accepts that he can no longer avoid the role history has assigned him. Yet Fire and Ash is careful not to present this as a final triumph. The mantle he carries is heavy, and the film subtly implies that such burdens are not meant to be carried indefinitely by one individual. The era of singular heroes is fading, making room for something more collective and uncertain. That shift becomes explicit through the change in narrative perspective. For the first time, the story is no longer solely guided by Jake's voice. Instead, it is reframed through the eyes of the younger generation, particularly Loak, whose reflections lend the film a sense of distance and introspection. This choice is crucial. By allowing a son to observe the struggles of his parents, Fire and Ash acknowledges that even the most righteous battles can leave behind choices that no longer suit the future. It is a quiet but powerful acknowledgement that legacy must evolve or risk becoming a relic. Within this transition, characters like Kiri and Spider emerge as pivotal figures. Spider, once peripheral, is given space to exist as more than a symbol of inherited guilt. His identity is no longer defined solely by his father's shadow, but by his own capacity for empathy and conflict. Kiri, meanwhile, embodies mystery and potential, her connection to Pandora suggesting a path forward that is neither rooted in hatred nor blind faith. Through them, the film gestures toward renewal without promising easy answers. Ultimately, Avatar, Fire and Ash closes not with certainty, but with intention. It recognizes that hatred may ignite action, but it cannot sustain a future. By shifting its focus from dominance to legacy, the film reinforces the idea that the most meaningful battles are not fought for control, but for continuity. The torch is being passed, not in a moment of celebration, but in quiet recognition that the world must change. And in that transition, Avatar finds a renewed sense of purpose, one grounded not in spectacle alone, but in the enduring weight of choice.